Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Iridium Axel, and welcome back to another video tutorial. Today, I'm going to be going over how to use the basic functions of Hitfilm Express in 2018. So that's the version that we're working with here. And so let's get started. The first thing you're going to need to do is go to fxhome.com/express. Come over here, get Hitfilm Express free right here. You're going to have to make an account and then hit send me the Express download. They'll send you an email with the link to download this software, and then we can get started. Alright, so now here we are in the software after I've downloaded it and set everything up, although I already had it installed, I'll admit. But when you're going through the installation, I would like to tell you to hit the download all features button, because it is more hard drive space on your computer that it'll take up, but it's also all of the features. So even though there are some that you might not ever use, I prefer not to take that risk. So right here on the home screen, when you start it up, you can see a whole bunch of different tutorials for how to do things in Hitfilms. There's also a user guide right here and add-on packs for the free version of Hitfilm, which is Express, if there's any specific features that you need that you don't have yet. And most of these are between like $5 and $20, but I would personally prefer to just get the Pro version if I was getting that serious about it, but whatever, it's your choice. So now we're going to get into creating a project. So we're going to hit New, and we have to select our template right here. They have plenty of different ones to choose from, but we're going to go for 1080p, Full HD, 60 FPS, because that's most of the video that I work with. Then the rest of these settings are perfectly fine, and we can come down here and hit Start Compositing or Start Editing. We're going to be working with editing for this video because most of you guys are probably going to be doing a lot of basic stuff, and that's where editing focuses. Compositing, you're looking more at like video effects and stuff. So let's just hit Start Editing. Alright, so here we are in the editor workspace. As you can see, it's kind of some complex stuff if you've never really worked with an editor like this before, so we'll go over each of these sections individually and what they do. If yours doesn't look exactly like this, all you have to do is come up to these boxes up here and hit Editing. And then that will set them all just like I have them for right now. And you can, of course, modify this stuff later. All of these things are boxes that can be dragged around into different positions. So you can have fun customizing your workspace for what you think is best. But what we're going to focus on first is the Media tab over here. Before we begin with using the Media panel, we have to go over the reason for the Media panel. So pretty much any media that you use, which means pictures, audio, video, will be going in here before going into your video, into the timeline, whatever. You can't just plop it straight out of a folder into the timeline. And the reason for this is because it'll keep it a lot more organized this way when you have your media center right here that you can just pull things from and put things into at a moment's notice, and it keeps it all grouped together in one place for you to use. With that being said, let's go ahead and show you some of the stuff that you can do to use the Media tab. So the first thing is, of course, you can drag videos from folders straight to here. So I'll drag it from here to here. And this is a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild clip that I have. As you can see, it shows up in here now. But I don't necessarily just want it floating there all on its own. That's kind of unorganized, especially when I start plopping in a ton of other videos and audios and pictures in here. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder by just clicking this button and name it Zelda. Now I can just drag that file into that folder, and now it's sorted in there with any other Zelda files I might want to get. Now I also know that maybe for this video I want to have some Minecraft clips. So I'll just type Minecraft into this other folder, and alternatively you can right click, hover over New, and create a folder that way, which I'm going to do because I also have some images that I might want to use. So let's look at any Minecraft videos that I might want to slap in here. I like this one right here, so I'll put that directly into the folder. I have a few others. I'll put this one directly into the folder, and I'll also put this one directly into the folder. I think that'll be good enough for now. So I can just close this now. That's all of my Minecraft files I want to slap in, but there's also some images that I want. So I'll open these, select all of these, and just plop them into the images folder. That way they'll all be ready for me to use throughout the video. Something else to note is if you don't feel like dragging the files in directly from a folder, you can just hit the import button right here and navigate to the file directly if you feel like you have to. Alright, so the next thing we're going to go over is the trimmer, and you can hop around from video to use in the trimmer by just going into your media panel and selecting it like that. So we're going to be working with our Zelda video here, and the way the trimmer works is you basically set an in and out point so that if you want to just grab a certain part of your video, you can, and it's not very hard. So I think what I want for this Zelda video is to zoom in to right when I go in the cave. So about here, I'm going to set an in point, and you can do that by just hitting I, so that's what I'm going to do, or you can hit this button over here. And then I want to find where I leave the cave, which is around here. So I'm just going to hit O. And now all I need to do is drag this into my timeline, which we'll go over in a second. And I have the trimmed down version of that Zelda clip. I can also do this with some of my Minecraft clips. So I'll just click on this one right here. I'll go right here, set an in point, and just a little bit further, set an out point, and drag this right on the end. Cool, right? Another noteworthy thing about the trimmer is you have these two buttons here, insert clip and overlay clips, and these also have hotkeys for them. A lot of things in video editors have hotkeys because that way you can navigate through any controls you may need very easily. So one of these is insert clip, where it will push the video that you're hovered on out of the way in either direction to insert your clip. I'm just going to Control Z that to get it out of here. And they also have overlay clip, where it will delete the section of the clip you're hovered on to go ahead and slap that video right in. The next thing we're going to go over is the editor timeline, which is one of the most important things in this entire program, so you had better pay attention. So the first thing that you can notice when you look at this is where your video and audio and images and whatever, this is where they go. So it shows from start to finish what your video is going to look like, where you can zip around to look at different parts of the video and how you can apply effects and such. This is your primary workspace. But before we begin actually working in this workspace, I want to make it lag a little less, because for some reason Hitfilm has a problem with displaying these nice crispy thumbnails here. So what I like to do is come down here to this little arrow, hover over video size, hit small, and then for audio size, hit medium, because that way it still shows the audio waveforms, as you can see there, but it's a lot smaller, it takes up less space, and since there's no thumbnails for the video, it actually makes Hitfilm lag a lot less, and I'm not quite sure why that is. It might just be on my computer, but I find you don't really need those thumbnails to be able to tell what's going on. Sometimes it might be helpful, but if that's the case, you can just turn it on for a second to see where everything is and then turn it back off. Also, with them being so small, you can fit a lot of different tracks. So what do I mean by tracks? Basically, you have the starting one video and one audio track. So you can have your videos going one after another. I can slap this one in here right after that cut down video that I had, and I can slap this one in there immediately afterwards if I want to. And as you can see, it instantly zoomed out so that I could see more of the screen. And that just gives us a linear timeline, clip to clip to clip to clip. But let's say you wanted to overlay something. Maybe you wanted to overlay music onto the pre-existing audio. Well, conveniently, I have a music file here. And it's an MDK song that I got for free, completely legally. And if you just drag that below, it'll create a second audio track. But if you want to create that audio track ahead of time, you can just right click under this double bar right here. So you're in the audio area, hit insert track and enter if you want to keep it as named audio 3, or you could have just renamed it right there to third audio track, for example. And you can do the same thing, of course, with video. I'll just create 2 more for us to work with. So now you have a lot more stuff to work with. You can overlay multiple sound effects if you want. You can overlay this music like we're doing here. And you can do whatever. But for music, a lot of times it's pretty loud, especially when you put it into a timeline, because it plays it at the actual loudness that the song is made. So if you want to hear my voice, you're going to have to turn it down. So as you can hear, that's pretty loud. So I can just grab this bar right here, which controls the gain, and mess around with it and play it until I find that it's quiet enough for me. I think that's a good audio level. So you can just play around with it that way if you really want to. And you can do the same thing with all of these different clips up here. You can play around with this one and just Control Z to get it back if you mess something up. You can mess around with each one individually if you so wish. All right, so now that we've added in our lovely music right here, let's say I also want to add an image. Thankfully, I have some images to add. So I'm going to slap this one from my images folder right here by dragging and clicking. I'm going to put it in the video 2 track right above my video, right about here, because that's where I want it for whatever reason. And as you can see, it's a little bit smaller than my whole screen because I'm using a 1080p video and a 720p image. And I don't necessarily need to have it that small, but I also want a little bit of my screen left. And so what you can do is just grab one of the corners here and move it around like that. But I don't want to move it around like that. That's going to mess with the aspect ratio and it's going to be kind of weird. So I'm going to go ahead, Control Z it. And I'm also going to hold Shift and pull out like that, which keeps it at a consistent aspect ratio as you stretch it. Also, I want to move it a little bit to the left and up. So I'm going to grab this red arrow right here, move it to the left, green arrow right here, move it up. So now I have this image right where I want it. For some reason, I want it right there. Or maybe I don't want it right there. Say I want it a lot smaller. And I want it in the corner of my video. So you can see it right in the corner as you're still watching the video. Everything makes nice, plentiful sense. All right, so now I've added that image, but I've noticed, oh no, the beginning of my video has no fade in. And it definitely needs a fade in because you don't want to just, bam, here's a video, people. So I'm going to go over to this tab over here, the Effects tab. And as you may imagine, there's a whole bunch of different effects you can use here. And I recommend you play around with them and see the ones that you like and the ones you want to mess with. But what I want to do is search in the Effects tab. So I'm going to search for Fade. And I'm going to go for Fade to Color because that's the one for video. These ones are for audio. So I'm going to slap my Fade to Color right here on the very beginning. And I can hold Control and scroll in to get closer. Or I can go down to this bar right here and scroll in to get closer or further away. But since I've scrolled in, I can grab onto the edge of this fade and make it a bit longer. So now when we play the video, it has a nice gradual fade. Although you don't want to use this fade for everything, because if you do use this fade for everything, you'll end up with some weird video effects, since it starts from an absolute black and moves into the color, rather than starting from being completely clear and moving to color. There's a difference there, because if we went to put a fade like that on top of our image, so I'll just get right here to the image, and we put the fade onto the image like this, and say I want to shorten it down, because I don't want to take want it to take up an entire half. And we're playing the video. If you so wish, but it fades in from black into the actual image. And let's watch that again because I know it was probably pretty fast. If you so wish, but yeah, as you can see, it appeared black and then it faded in. But you don't usually want that for something that's overlaid on a video. So how do you do something else, a different fade that'll be better? Have it come from clear into vision. Well, we're going to come up to controls up here. So that's the second tab with the one right next to media. We're going to go to transform, and then we're going to go to opacity. And this is getting a little more complex, so pay attention. We're going to scroll in a little bit just to see what we're working with a little bit more. We can see this clip or this image is on screen for what looks like about 2 seconds. But there's a cooldown on the rod, so maybe like 4 seconds? Something like that. It's not very long at all. So we're going to start from the beginning. Make sure that this image is selected. We're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to go over to this opacity thing and click the button right there. And that means that it has set a keyframe at the very beginning or wherever we have selected on there. So what we want to do is, before even moving and scrubbing through the timeline, we're going to take the opacity all the way down. So that means it's completely clear. Then we're going to move in a little bit. So we don't want it to be a full second that we move in. So let's just make it 42 seconds, 00 milliseconds. So we move into there, and from there, we want it to move into the full opacity. And then here, we're going to come to the end and sort of find our way a little bit back. It doesn't have to be exact, of course, because who's going to look down at the exact frame where it happens? So we're going to come right here, and you need to set another keyframe. Now, you can't see these keyframes, but they are there. They're pretty much markers for what the state of the video is at that specific point. So once we come right here, all we need to do is drag it down and back up, and that'll set a new keyframe since keyframing is on. And after we do that, we just come right to the end, and we bring it back to 0 again. So if we come to the beginning, you'll see so wish, but it fades in nice and fast, and then it fades out just as easily with no weird blackness to it. So that's how you create a fade for something like that. And we've also explained the effects tab. But let's say you really didn't like that. We can also go back in the history. So I didn't really like having that fade out. For some reason, I want it to cut suddenly, so I'll go back to this layer of the timeline. So I believe now, if we just move back a little bit and hit play, there's a cooldown on the rod, so whatever, it just disappears because we've set our timeline a little bit differently for the history. All right, so now that we've gone over a few things being the editor, the media, we've pretty much gone over the viewer pretty well, although I have a few more things I need to mention about that. Effects, history, we can get into the audio mixer, and we've also gone over the trimmer. We have more stuff to go through in controls and viewer, but then I think we're going to be about done. So the audio mixer, pretty much for every single audio track that you have, it has the levels for it. So the levels of loudness, which is this bar right here, and the levels for left or right ear. So if you want, say, I don't know, audio 2 is just our song. So if we go to audio 2 and we want it only in the right ear for whatever reason, it'll only play out of the right ear once we do that. But I want to set it right back to 0 where it was because nobody likes hearing stuff like that. But let's say we also wanted my voice to be a little bit louder than the music, so I'll turn up my voice by a little bit and turn down the music by a little bit. And you have much more control over the exact audio levels here. And then right over here we have the master, which controls every single piece of audio in the entire thing. So you can drag that all over the place, but generally I keep it at 0, 0 and just modify each clip. And just like with the opacity, we can also set keyframes for these. So you would just click on this and then select your certain points, select your changes in the audio, and it would automatically keyframe it for you. Again, you can always go back to history to get rid of these weird keyframes if you made a mistake and accidentally set something somewhere that you didn't want to. So you can always backtrack and find your way to what you're actually trying to do if you make a mistake. Alright, so back to the Controls tab. We'll have this video selected right here as an example. They have a few more things that we haven't played around with. The Controls tab, is pretty much more specific editing. Like, I already talked about the opacity and what you can do with that, but I haven't really talked about the other things, like rotation. You can set the rotation manually by using this wheel. You can also drag right here to get your exact number if you want to. Or you can put in an exact number by typing it. Or you can come right here and hit 1, and that will be 1x rotation, 2x rotation, but you can't see any changes, of course, because one full rotation just puts it right back to where it was before. So it's an absolute of 720 degrees that we rotated it like that. Of course, you can do the keyframing just like you could before. So I'll turn it on right here, and that has it at 0 rotations. And then I'll fast forward to here and make it 1 rotation. So if we back up a little, we can see that it rotates. So that's actually quite cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at it real quick here. So basically, we have this tool, the rod, and so that was the full rotation that we got. And we could get a partial rotation in the exact same way, of course. And I'll turn off the keyframing now because we don't really need to mess with that. And that got rid of our keyframes. That's another quick way to get rid of all of them. You could just turn it off, then back on. And now we can go over scale. Hooray! This, as you may be able to imagine, is the scale of zoom that your image is. So you can zoom in really close like that by making the scale bigger. You're making the video bigger pretty much. Or you can zoom out really far, make it smaller. And if you zoom out far enough, it flips it upside down. And it goes into the negative numbers. So that's pretty cool. You can do the same thing with keyframing as you can with all the others, although I'm not going to show you that because who really cares? And then we have position. That's pretty much using these red and green arrows on a more specific scale. So I can move it that way a little bit, move it that way a little bit, and I can make it a very specific number if I want to. So -50, and that way I can get the exact positioning of whatever video that I want. You can also set an anchor point, and let me see if I can explain what this means. Basically, the anchor point starts out in the middle of the video, but you can move it around by dragging these things right here. And it looks like it's moving the video, and it sort of is, but really the video is always in a relative position to the anchor point. So when I change the anchor point, the video moves relative to the anchor point, which stays in the center of the viewer no matter what, so that you can't lose track of it. Now that I've moved the video to the side, as you can see, the video moves relative to the rotation from the anchor point that I'm giving it. So I can make the anchor point even further away, and then if we zoom out, which you can do by holding control and scrolling, you can see that the video still rotates in reference to the anchor point. So now let's go back and zoom in a little bit. If you ever lose track of where you zoomed in, just hit scale to fit, and that will put it exactly where it needs to be. And of course, you can keyframe this as well. So you can move the anchor point as you go through the video. But I think you have the idea of what I mean when I say that you can keyframe things now. So I'm not going to go over that very much from here on in. So now back to the viewer here. We can go to options, and there's a bunch of things that you can make sure of right here. So they have the playback quality. I have it set to draft because it's not very big, and that pretty much gets rid of a good bit of lag. But you can go to quick or fastest. You can also go to playback resolution. I have it set to full because my computer can handle it, at least for now. And we also have the paused quality, which is final. So that's whenever you stop the video, what it's going to look like, which I would recommend that you have yours set to, because that way, whenever you pause the video, say you're going for a specific frame to see what it looks like, you'll really get the idea there. Paused resolution, again, have that set to full. It has the show motion path, so if you have your video moving, it shows how it's going to move on the screen. They also have effect controls, checkerboard background, which I highly recommend. Background color, don't really need that. And you have export frame. So if you want a certain frame from the editor, so maybe for a thumbnail or whatever, you can hit that and save that specific image from the video. So we have one last thing to really go over before we get to the end of the video, which is the export tab up here. And that's the meters tab. Pretty much what this does is it shows you how loud your audio is as you watch through the video. And it's not necessary if you've looked at your audio beforehand, but if you haven't, you might want it here, because around this point, if it gets up here, your audio will probably start clipping or distorting or being too loud in general. So you want to keep an eye on that, and that's sort of what the meters help you to do. And it shows the left and right on different channels. So if you're using a stereo microphone where it detects different sound from different angles, you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on this so you can see how loud the left or right ear is and maybe try and balance it out with the audio mixer over here. And one final thing before we move on, I almost forgot, but in the viewer, you can set the in point and the out point for the entire editor timeline. Now, this isn't fixed. You can select to export the content only, but if you want a very specific in and out point, all you need to do is scroll out in the timeline and select those points. And if you can't scroll out because there's nothing there, then there's a good chance you don't need to scroll out. So if I wanted the out point to be set exactly at the end, so right about here, I would just come right here and hit set out point. So we've moved the out point forward a little bit from the default 5 minutes that it is. All right, so now we're in the export area. And right here we have the editor timeline that shows the in and out that we have. And usually if you had composite shots and stuff, which I might go into in a later video if you leave a comment saying that you actually want that. But you might have composite shots and stuff right here, so you can decide which things you want to export. But all we have is the editor because that's all we worked with. So this is what we're going to want to export. Now, you don't usually want the in and out points of the video. You usually want the content area, at least for the types of videos I make. And that's probably applies to a lot of people who will be watching this video. So all you have to do is hit right here and hit contents. So that'll put it in the queue to start exporting. But be careful, because before you do this, you're going to want to make sure that you're exporting presets are what you want. Now, I already have some presets I made for the 60 and 30 FPS varieties for 1080p, but they have plenty of presets already here. They have the YouTube 1080p HD, and you can, of course, modify the preset by right-clicking and hitting Edit Preset. The 1080p HD will probably work for some people. Frame rate is same as source with that. You can have the variable frame rate, and it has a target bit rate and max bit rate of 16, which is definitely good. Or you can always make your own preset by hitting the new preset button right here, and selecting MP4 is what I would recommend. And you can mess around with the different settings in here. But in general, for most people, you're probably looking at something pretty good with the 1080p preset. I'm going to go for the 60 FPS one that I made myself because That's the one that I like to use, but it's just something to think about. You can also delete presets if you made one that you didn't like. Yeah. All right, so now we can finally hit export contents, and that creates this little thing right here in the exporting queue. So you can export multiple things in an order in the queue if you want to, but we want to name our video. So I'm going to name it tutorial video template example thing. Hit enter. And so that's going to be the name when it's ready. And you can also navigate to whatever folder you want it to be placed in here, because it won't be placed in your videos folder by default. I changed it to that. Generally, it's going to be in a Hitfilm export folder, but I didn't want it there. So yeah. Now all you need to do is hit start exporting and wait. All right, thanks a ton for watching. If you guys would like more stuff about Hitfilm in the future, then just leave a comment that says that you would like to see that. Also over here, they have the preview as it renders, so it shows you what it's rendering. But yeah, thanks a ton for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I guess I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.